Something felt off the moment that update hit. Not loud, not dramatic, just that quiet shift you recognize if you followed this team long enough. The kind that tells you this isn't just another rough stretch. Moses Moody going down with a torn patellar tendon didn't just hurt the rotation, it changed the temperature around the entire locker room. And when you stack that on top of Al Horford still not being right physically, you start to see why the Warriors are moving the way they are right now. Because this second 10-day contract for Omer Yurtseven isn't about upside, it's about survival. This is a team sitting at 34-38, holding on to that 10th spot in the West, like it could slip at any moment. And if you've been watching closely, you know this isn't how this system is supposed to look. The win over Dallas should have steadied things, should have felt like momentum. Instead, it left them thinner than they were before tip-off. And here's where it gets real. Moody wasn't just another body. He was one of the few wings on this roster that could give you energy on both ends without breaking the flow. Now he's gone, and suddenly Steve Kerr is back to patchwork solutions. Yurtseven steps in, but when you look at what he's actually giving you, it tells the full story. Limited minutes, low efficiency, modest production. That's not a fix, that's a placeholder. Right, always with Curry, if you believe he can still lead the Warriors to another great season. The bigger issue shows up when you watch how the team has to adjust around him. Golden State's identity has always been about movement, reads, spacing, bigs who can think the game. When Draymond or even Horford are out there, everything connects. With Yurtseven, that rhythm changes. The floor shrinks. Driving lanes get tighter, especially for guys like Kuminga who rely on space to attack. Defensively, it becomes even more complicated. This team built its success on switching, on speed, on reading plays before they fully develop. But with a traditional big on the floor, Kerr doesn't have that flexibility. Now you're dropping back in pick-and-roll coverage, and in today's league, guards are going to test that every single time. You could already see it against Detroit. That's not a one-game issue. That's something teams will keep targeting, and Kerr knows it. But what's the alternative? You can't run Draymond at the 5 all night in March and expect him to hold up when games start to matter even more. So now every decision becomes a trade-off. You protect bodies, or you protect the system. Right now, they're trying to do both, and it's stretching everything thin. Comment, the dynasty is not over. If you think the Warriors still have more to show. Upstairs, it's not any easier. Every move is being calculated through the cap, the tax, all the restrictions that come with keeping a core together this long. A second 10-day deal might look small from the outside, but inside that front office, it's deliberate. It's about staying flexible, avoiding even heavier penalties, and still finding a way to put a team on the floor every night. But that's the trade-off of a decade at the top. You commit to greatness, and eventually the margins get tight. Injuries hit harder, options get limited, and now they're in a spot where they can't just go out and fix things with a big move. They have to work with what's left out there. You can feel it in the building too. There's tension, not panic, but that awareness that every game from here on out carries weight. Moody was supposed to be part of what comes next, not someone you lose right when you need depth the most. And now, the veterans are carrying even more. Draymond holding the defense together, Steph still doing what he does, even as everything around him keeps shifting. Right, never count out the Warriors if you know this team always finds a way to compete. The standings aren't giving them any room to breathe either. That 10th seed isn't secure. One bad week and you're out. One good stretch, and you're back in control. That's how thin the line is right now. And even a game that looks easy on paper, like Brooklyn coming in, doesn't feel simple when your rotation looks like this. So now it comes down to small things. Can Yurtseven give you 10 to 15 minutes where you don't lose ground? Can he rebound, set screens, stay out of foul trouble? Not dominate, just stabilize. Because at this point, even neutral minutes matter. And that's what makes this stretch so important. It's not about playing perfect basketball. It's about holding things together long enough to reach that play-in. Because once you get there, with Steph Curry on the floor, nobody is comfortable facing you in a one-game situation. Comment, Curry is still special if you believe he remains one of the most unique players in basketball. But getting there, that's where the real fight is. And what's happening right now, this isn't just about one injury or one roster move. It's about how much this group has left to give under pressure, with everything tightening at the same time. And the next few games are going to start answering that in a way numbers can't fully explain. You start noticing it in the details, not just in the box score, but in how possessions unfold when Steph sits for even a couple minutes. The offense loses that natural flow, reads get slower, and suddenly every trip down the floor feels heavier than it should. That's where this current version of the roster is being tested the most, in those small windows where control slips just enough to swing a game. And it's not only about offense. The defensive communication hasn't been as sharp, especially with different pieces rotating in and out. When roles keep changing, timing gets affected. Closeouts come a step late, switches aren't as clean, and against teams that move the ball well, that's all it takes. This is where you see how thin the margin really is for this group right now. Right, Warriors pride if you have supported this team through every era. There's also something else building quietly. Opponents are starting to approach Golden State differently. Not with fear, but with opportunity. They see a team dealing with injuries, adjusting lineups, and they attack those weak points early. That means the Warriors are no longer dictating the pace the way they used to. Now they're reacting more, and that's not where this system thrives. Even so, there are flashes that remind you exactly who you're watching. Steph creating space out of nothing, Draymond reading a play before it happens, those quick scoring bursts that flip momentum in seconds. That part hasn't disappeared. It just doesn't last as long as it used to, and that's the challenge. Comment, the Bay still believes, if you trust that Golden State can rise again. What makes this stretch so intriguing is how it's forcing adjustments that we haven't really seen from this team in years. Simpler sets, more direct actions, less reliance on the constant motion that defined their identity. It's not as fluid, not as beautiful, but it's necessary given what's available on the floor. And this is where the next layer of pressure comes in, because every decision Kerr makes now is tied to something bigger than just one game. It's about preserving enough energy, enough structure, enough belief to stay alive in the standings. One wrong rotation, one cold stretch, and the gap can open fast. Right, with Steph until the end. If you believe that as long as Curry is on the court, anything is possible. Inside that locker room, you know the conversations are different now. Less about long-term adjustments and more about immediate responses. Short-term fixes, quick recoveries, staying locked in possession by possession. That's the mindset of a team trying to hold its position while everything around it keeps shifting. And here's the part most people outside don't fully see yet. The front office is watching all of this just as closely because what happens in this stretch could influence decisions that go beyond this season. Not in a dramatic way, but in those subtle evaluations about what still works and what might need to change. Comment, this story isn't finished yet if you think the Warriors still have another chapter to write. So now every game carries more than just the result. It's about how they compete, how they adjust, who steps up when things don't go as planned. Because if they can stabilize through this stretch, even just enough, it keeps everything within reach. And if you've been following this team closely, you already know how quickly things can shift when momentum turns at the right time. If you want to stay ahead of everything happening with the Warriors, every rotation shift, every behind-the-scenes decision that actually shapes this team, make sure you subscribe right now, because what's coming next could redefine how this season is remembered. If you're part of Warriors Nation and you want to follow every chapter of this team's journey, subscribe now. Because the next stretch isn't just about surviving games, it's about how this team handles moments when things don't go their way early. If they fall behind, do they still have enough cohesion to respond, or does the lack of depth start to show even more? That's where contenders separate themselves. And right now, Golden State is being pushed into that question every single night. There's also a growing weight on Curry that you can't ignore. Not just scoring, but organizing everything, keeping the tempo under control, making sure the offense doesn't stall when defenses start loading up on him. At this stage, teams are comfortable throwing different looks, trapping higher, forcing the ball out of his hands, and daring the rest of the roster to beat them consistently. Right, experience wins games if you value what the veterans bring to this team, and that's where the missing pieces become even more noticeable. Without reliable spacing from the front court, and with fewer two-way wings available, the balance gets disrupted. You end up asking players to do things slightly outside their natural role, and over time, that adds up. Not in one possession, but across quarters, across games. At the same time, there's a quiet opportunity here for certain guys. When rotations shrink, minutes open up in unexpected ways, and in this league, those moments can change how a player is viewed moving forward. The question is, is whether anyone can grab that space and turn it into something stable. Comment: champions never quit. If you believe the Warriors still have the heart of a champion. The schedule doesn't slow down either. Teams fighting for positioning are not easing up, and every opponent understands exactly what's at stake for Golden State right now. That means no breathing room, no nights where you can coast and expect talent to carry you through. Everything has to be earned. And still, there's that underlying feeling that as long as number 30 is out there, nothing is completely off the table. Not because it's easy, but because he's done it too many times for anyone to fully doubt it. The difference now is how much help he can realistically count on when the game tightens late. Right, Curry deserves another run if you believe the franchise should build one more contender around him. This is where attention to detail becomes everything. Rebounding, limiting turnovers, executing simple actions cleanly. Not the highlight plays, but the ones that decide whether a close game swings in your favor or slips away. And with the current state of the roster, those details carry even more weight than usual. You can sense that the margin is down to almost nothing. One stretch of sloppy play can undo a full night of effort, and that's the kind of pressure that either sharpens a team or exposes it. Comment: Golden State still has magic if you think this team can surprise the league again. And if you're really following what's happening behind the scenes, this is exactly the moment where things can shift quickly, either toward a late push or toward something much harder to recover from. That's why it's critical to stay locked in right now, because the next updates won't just be about results. They'll reveal where this team is truly headed. Make sure you subscribe now and stay with the channel, because the next breakdown is going deeper into what's being discussed internally and how these next decisions could impact everything around Steph and this roster moving forward. If you're a real Warriors fan and want to stay updated on everything happening with this team, subscribe now because things could get interesting very soon. There's a sense that the next game won't just be another date on the schedule. It's going to reveal how much this group can still hold together when everything feels unstable. Not just effort, but execution under pressure, especially late when legs get heavy and decisions matter more. Right, a champion always returns if you believe the Warriors can rise again. Because if they manage to steady things now, even slightly, it changes the tone around this team heading into the final stretch. And that's exactly what makes these next moments so important. Comment: Steph is living history if you believe we are watching one of the greatest players ever. If you want real inside-level Warriors coverage, the kind that connects every move, every rotation, every signal behind the scenes, subscribe now and stay ahead before the next shift happens.